The heart in Michael's chest didn't feel like his own. With each beat, it whispered secrets of a life he'd never lived, urging him towards a truth that would shatter everything he thought he knew. The incessant beeping of medical equipment filled the sterile hospital room, a stark contrast to the bustling boardrooms Michael Reeves was accustomed to. The rhythmic sound, once a source of anxiety, now served as a reminder that he was alive barely. Michael's gaze drifted from the ceiling tiles to the window, where the New York City skyline stood tall and unforgiving, much like the empire he had built. 2 weeks had passed since the heart transplant that saved his life, yet Michael felt as if he were still teetering on the edge of existence. The attack had come without warning, striking him down in the middle of a crucial merger negotiation. One moment, he was confidently outlining projections for the board. The next, he was clutching his chest, gasping for air as the world faded to black. Now, as he lay in recovery, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted within him. It wasn't just a foreign heart beating in his chest. It was as if his very essence had been altered. A soft knock at the door interrupted his musings. Dr. Amelia Chun, his cardiologist, entered with a gentle smile that did little to mask the concern in her eyes. "How are we feeling today, Mr. Reeves?" she asked, approaching his bedside. Michael attempted to sit up straighter, wincing at the effort. "Like I've been hit by a truck, but I suppose that's an improvement over feeling dead." Doctor Chun's lips twitched at his gallows humor. "Wow, your vitals are showing steady improvement. The new heart seems to be adapting well. When can I get back to work?" Michael asked, his mind already racing with thoughts of pending deals and market fluctuations. Dr. Chen's expression hardened slightly. "Mr. Reeves, you've just undergone a major transplant. Your body needs time to heal, and your mind needs to adjust. Rushing back into your old lifestyle could jeopardize your recovery." Michael waved a hand dismissively. "I've built my company from the ground up, Dr. Chun. It needs me. And your daughters? Don't they need you too?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Michael's thoughts turned to Sarah and Emily, his teenage daughters, who had become virtual strangers over the years. He hadn't seen them since before the surgery. They were staying with their mother, his ex-wife, while he recovered. "They're better off with their mother," Michael muttered, more to himself than to Dr. Chun. "I'm not exactly father of the year material," Dr. Chun sighed, jotting something in his chart. "Mr. Reeves, I'm not just here to monitor your physical health. A heart transplant is a life-changing event. Many patients experience emotional and psychological changes. It's important to be open to these changes and to seek support when needed." Michael nodded absently, his mind already drifting back to work. "I appreciate your concern, doctor, but I know myself. Once I'm out of here, everything will go back to normal." As Dr. Chun left the room, Michael reached for his phone, scrolling through a barrage of emails and missed calls. His finger hovered over Jake Sullivan's name, his best friend and business partner. Jake had been running things in his absence, but Michael knew the company needed his touch, his vision. Just as he was about to make the call, a wave of exhaustion washed over him. His eyelids grew heavy, and before he knew it, he had drifted off into a deep sleep. The dream came suddenly and vividly. Michael found himself in a cozy living room he didn't recognize, sunlight streaming through large windows. The scent of freshly baked cookies filled the air, and the sound of children's laughter echoed from somewhere nearby. A feeling of warmth and contentment enveloped him, so foreign yet so comforting. 2 young children burst into the room, a boy and a girl, their faces alight with joy. Without hesitation, they ran towards Michael, wrapping their small arms around him in a tight embrace. Love pure, unconditional love flooded his being. He hugged them back fiercely, feeling a connection he had never experienced before, not even with his own daughters. "Daddy, you're home," the little girl exclaimed, her brown eyes sparkling with adoration. Michael opened his mouth to speak, to explain that there must be some mistake, but no words came out. Instead, he found himself smiling, ruffling the boys' hair and pulling them both closer. "I missed you both so much," he heard himself say, the words foreign yet feeling utterly right. The dream shifted, and suddenly Michael was in the kitchen, helping the children with their homework. He moved with practiced ease, as if he had done this 1,000 times before. The feeling of belonging, of being exactly where he was meant to be, was overwhelming. As he leaned over to help the little boy with a math problem, Michael caught sight of his reflection in the window. The face staring back at him was his own, yet somehow softer, lined with laughter rather than stress. His eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were warm and filled with an emotion he barely recognized: happiness. The scene changed again, and Michael found himself tucking the children into bed. He read them a story, his voice gentle and soothing. As he kissed each child goodnight, he felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. "I love you, Daddy," the little girl murmured sleepily. "I love you too, sweetheart," Michael replied, the words coming naturally, filled with a depth of emotion he had never allowed himself to feel before. As he closed the bedroom door, the dream began to fade. Michael tried desperately to hold on to it, to remain in this world where he was loved, where he was whole. But reality began to intrude, the beeping of hospital machines growing louder, pulling him back to consciousness. Michael's eyes snapped open, his heart racing. The sterile hospital room came into focus, a jarring contrast to the warm, loving home of his dream. He sat up, gasping for air, his mind reeling from the intensity of the experience. What was happening to him? The dream had felt so real, so vivid. He could still feel the children's arms around him, still smell the scent of home-baked cookies. But those weren't his children. That wasn't his life. He was Michael Reeves, CEO of Reeve Tech, not some suburban dad baking cookies and helping with homework. And yet, a part of him ached for that life, for the love and connection he had felt in the dream. It was a longing so intense it frightened him. A nurse rushed in, alerted by his elevated heart rate. "Mr. Reeves, are you all right? Do you need anything?" Michael shook his head, trying to compose himself. "I'm fine," he muttered. "Just a dream." But as the nurse checked his vitals, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than just a dream. Something had changed within him, something profound and irreversible. As the days passed, the dreams continued, each more vivid than the last. Michael found himself torn between two worlds: the familiar, driven existence of his waking hours, and the warm, loving life he experienced in his sleep. The contrast was stark and unsettling. During his waking hours, Michael threw himself into work, using his phone and laptop to manage his company from his hospital bed, much to Dr. Chun's disapproval. He conducted video conferences, reviewed reports, and made crucial decisions, all while machines monitored his healing heart. But at night, in his dreams, he was a different man. He played with the children in the park, attended school plays, and shared quiet moments with a faceless woman he somehow knew was their mother. In these dreams, work was secondary, family was everything. The dichotomy was taking its toll. Michael found himself distracted during important calls, his mind wandering to the family that existed only in his dreams. He caught himself smiling at small things: the sound of a child's laughter in the hospital corridor, the sight of a father holding his daughter's hand in the parking lot. Jake visited often, bringing updates on the company and concerned looks that Michael pretended not to notice. During one such visit, as Jake was detailing a potential new acquisition, Michael found his attention drifting. "Mike, are you listening?" Jake's voice cut through his reverie. Michael blinked, focusing on his friend's worried face. "Sorry, Jake. I was just thinking." Jake leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What's going on with you? You seem different, distracted. Is everything okay with the heart?" Michael hesitated, unsure how to explain the turmoil he was experiencing. How could he tell his hard-driving, business-focused friend about the dreams, about the longing for a life he'd never wanted before? "I'm fine," he said finally. "Just adjusting to the medication, I guess." Jake didn't look convinced, but he nodded, returning to his report. As he spoke of profit margins and market shares, Michael found his mind wandering again, this time to his own daughters. When was the last time he had attended one of Sarah's soccer games or listened to Emily practice her violin? He couldn't remember. The realization hit him like a physical blow, leaving him short of breath. "Mike?" Jake's voice was alarmed now. "Should I call the nurse?" Michael shook his head, waving off Jake's concern. No, I'm fine. Just Jake, do you ever wonder if we've gotten our priorities wrong? Jake stared at him, bewildered. What are you talking about? Nothing, Michael said quickly. Forget I said anything. Tell me more about the acquisition. As Jake resumed his report, Michael made a mental note to call his daughters. It was time, he realized, to start bridging the gap he had allowed to grow between them. That night, as he drifted off to sleep, Michael found himself both dreading and longing for the dreams that he knew would come. He was changing, he realized. The question was, into what? As the days stretched into weeks, Michael's recovery progressed steadily, but the internal conflict that had taken root in his mind only grew more intense. The dreams continued nightly, each one more vivid and emotionally charged than the last. During his waking hours, Michael found himself increasingly distracted. His once laser-like focus on business matters, now constantly interrupted by thoughts of the family that existed only in his subconscious. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the hospital room window, Michael received an unexpected visitor. His ex-wife, Catherine, entered the room, her face a mixture of concern and apprehension. It had been months since they'd last spoken, their communication limited to terse emails about their daughter's schedules. "Hello, Michael," Catherine said, hovering near the door. "How are you feeling?" Michael struggled to sit up straighter, suddenly acutely aware of how vulnerable he must look. "I'm improving," he replied, searching for words. "Thank you for coming." Catherine moved closer, her eyes taking in the various machines and monitors surrounding the bed. "The girls wanted to come, but I thought it might be too much for you right now." A pang of guilt shot through Michael. He hadn't seen Sarah and Emily since before the surgery. "How are they?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Catherine's expression softened slightly. "They're worried about you, Michael. We all are. It's been a shock for everyone." Michael nodded, unsure how to respond. In the past, he would have bristled at any sign of weakness, especially in front of Catherine. But now, he found himself grateful for her presence, for this tenuous connection to his daughters. "I've been thinking about them a lot," Michael admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. I'd like to see them when I'm stronger." Catherine's eyebrows rose slightly, but she nodded. "I think they'd like that too." She paused, seeming to choose her next words carefully. "Michael, I know we've had our differences, but I want you to know that if you need anything at all, you can call me." The offer, so unexpected and genuine, brought a lump to Michael's throat. He managed a nod, not trusting himself to speak. As Catherine turned to leave, Michael found himself calling out to her. "Kath?" She looked back, surprise evident on her face at the use of her old nickname. "Thank you," he said simply. After she left, Michael lay back, his mind racing. The brief interaction with Catherine had stirred something in him, bringing into sharp focus the extent of what he had lost in his relentless pursuit of success. The dreams of the unknown family were vivid and enticing, but they were just that, dreams. His real family, his daughters, were out there, and he had pushed them away. That night, as Michael drifted off to sleep, his dreams took on a different quality. Instead of the unknown children, he saw Sarah and Emily. They were younger, maybe 7 and 5, playing in the backyard of their old house. Michael watched as his younger self joined them, lifting Sarah onto his shoulders while Emily clung to his leg, all three of them laughing. The scene shifted, and suddenly they were older. Sarah was in a soccer uniform, her face flushed with victory. Emily sat at a piano, her fingers dancing across the keys. In both scenes, Michael saw himself in the background, distracted by his phone, only half present in these crucial moments of his daughters' lives. He woke with tears in his eyes, a profound sense of loss weighing heavily on his chest. As the days passed, Michael found himself opening up to Dr. Chun about the dreams and the emotional turmoil they were causing. The cardiologist listened with empathy, offering insights that both comforted and challenged him. "It's not uncommon for transplant recipients to experience psychological changes," Dr. Chun explained during one of their sessions. "Some researchers believe that memories and personality traits can be stored in cells throughout the body, not just in the brain. It's called cellular memory." Michael leaned forward, intrigued despite his skepticism. "Are you saying these dreams could be?" Memories from my donor? Doctor. Chun shook her head slightly. We can't say for certain. The science is still controversial. What we do know is that a major life event like this often leads people to reevaluate their priorities. The dreams could be your subconscious mind's way of processing these changes. As Michael pondered this thought, Chun continued, her voice gentle but firm. Regardless of the dream's origin, Mr. Reeves, they seem to be highlighting something important. Perhaps it's worth exploring what that might be. The conversation with Dr. Chun stuck with Michael, prompting him to reflect on his life choices in a way he never had before. He thought about the years he'd spent building his company, the long hours, the missed family dinners, the broken promises to his daughters. He'd always justified it as necessary sacrifices for their future, but now he wasn't so sure. One afternoon, as Michael was scrolling through emails on his phone, a notification popped up. It was a reminder for Emily's violin recital, scheduled for the following week. In the past, he would have dismissed it without a second thought, sending his assistant to buy flowers and make an excuse for his absence. This time, however, he found himself hesitating. Before he could overthink it, Michael pressed the call button next to his bed. When the nurse appeared, he asked, "Could you please contact Dr. Chun? I'd like to discuss the possibility of attending an event outside the hospital next week." The nurse looked surprised but nodded. "Of course, Mr. Reeves. I'll let her know right away." As he waited for Dr. Chun, Michael's mind raced with possibilities. What if he could be there for Emily's recital? What if he could start bridging the gap between himself and his daughters? The thought both excited and terrified him. Dr. Chun arrived shortly, her expression curious. "The nurse said you wanted to discuss leaving the hospital?" Michael nodded, suddenly feeling like a child asking for permission. "My daughter has a violin recital next week. I'd like to attend if it's medically feasible." Dr. Chun's eyebrows rose slightly, but a small smile played at her lips. "I see. Well, your recovery has been progressing well. If you feel up to it, and with certain precautions in place, I don't see why we couldn't arrange a brief outing." Relief washed over Michael, followed quickly by a wave of nervousness. "Thank you, Dr. Chun. I appreciate your support." As Dr. Chun left to make the necessary arrangements, Michael picked up his phone again, his finger hovering over Catherine's number. Taking a deep breath, he pressed call. "Michael?" Catherine's voice was laced with concern. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, everything's fine," he reassured her quickly. I was wondering if it would be all right if I attended Emily's recital next week." The silence on the other end of the line seemed to stretch for an eternity before Catherine finally responded. "Are you sure you're up for it?" "Dr. Chun has cleared it," Michael explained. "I know it's last minute, and if it would make Emily uncomfortable, I understand. I'd like to be there, if I can." Another pause, shorter this time. "Okay," Catherine said softly. I think Emily would like that. I'll let her know." After ending the call, Michael leaned back in his bed, a mix of emotions swirling within him. He was taking a step towards reconnecting with his daughters, towards being the father he now realized he should have been all along. It was a small step, but an important one. As night fell and Michael prepared for sleep, he found himself both anticipating and fearing the dreams that would come. Would he see the unknown family again, or would his own daughters feature in his nighttime visions? Either way, he was beginning to understand that these dreams, whatever their source, were guiding him towards a truth he had long ignored. With this thought in mind, Michael closed his eyes, ready to face whatever his subconscious, or perhaps his new heart, had to show him. The day of Emily's recital arrived, bringing with it a whirlwind of emotions for Michael. As he sat in the back of the town car Chun had arranged for him, he felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The familiar New York cityscape passed by outside the window, but Michael barely noticed it. His mind focused on the upcoming event and the potential for reconnection with his daughter. As the car pulled up to the school auditorium, Michael took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. With careful movements, mindful of his still healing body, he exited the vehicle. The nurse who had accompanied him hovered nearby, ready to assist if needed. Michael paused at the entrance, suddenly overwhelmed by the normalcy of the scene before him. Parents and siblings streamed into the building, chattering excitedly about the performances to come. How long had it been since he'd been part of such an ordinary, yet significant moment in his children's lives? As he entered the auditorium, Michael scanned the crowd, searching for familiar faces. His heart skipped a beat when he spotted Catherine and Sarah seated near the front. Taking another deep breath, he made his way towards them. Sarah noticed him first, her eyes widening in surprise. She nudged Catherine, who turned and locked eyes with Michael. A range of emotions flickered across her face: surprise, concern, and something that might have been approval. "Michael," Catherine said as he approached. "I'm glad you could make it." Sarah remained silent, her expression guarded. Michael felt a pang of regret, realizing how much of a stranger he must seem to his own daughter. "Thank you for allowing me to come," Michael replied, his voice softer than usual. He turned to Sarah, offering a tentative smile. "Hello, Sarah. It's good to see you." Sarah nodded, her response barely above a whisper. "Hi, Dad." The awkwardness of the moment was interrupted by the dimming of the lights. As Michael took his seat, he couldn't help but feel like an intruder in this world he had so long neglected. But he was here now, determined to start making amends. The recital began, a procession of young musicians showcasing their talents. Michael found himself genuinely engaged, moved by the passion and dedication of these children. When Emily's turn came, he felt his heart swell with a pride he had almost forgotten he would feel. Emily took the stage, her posture perfect as she raised her violin. For a moment, she scanned the audience, and Michael saw the exact moment she spotted him. Her eyes widened slightly, but then a small smile tugged at her lips. As she began to play, Michael was transported. The melody that flowed from Emily's violin was hauntingly beautiful. Michael closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him. In his mind's eye, he saw flashes of Emily growing up, her first steps, her first day of school, moments he had been present for but hadn't truly appreciated at the time. As the final notes faded away, Michael opened his eyes to find them wet with tears. The audience erupted in applause, and he joined in, his heart bursting with pride and a deep, aching love for his daughter. After the recital, as families gathered to congratulate the young musicians, Michael stood back, unsure of his place in this celebration. But then he saw Emily making her way towards him, violin case in hand, a mix of shyness and hope on her face. "Dad," she said, her voice barely audible above the crowd. "You came." Michael nodded, fighting back tears. "I wouldn't have missed it for the world, Emily. You were incredible." Before he could say more, Emily stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him in a gentle hug. Michael froze for a moment, then carefully returned the embrace, mindful of his healing chest. In that moment, he felt something shift within him, as if a piece of his heart, his new heart, had finally found its proper place. The ride back to the hospital was quiet. Michael lost in thought as he replayed the events of the evening. The nurse, sensing his mood, respectfully maintained silence. As they arrived at the hospital, Michael turned to her. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This evening, it meant more than I can express." The nurse smiled warmly. "It's my pleasure, Mr. Reeves. I'm glad it went well." That night, as Michael drifted off to sleep, his mind was filled with images of Emily's performance, Sarah's guarded expression, and the feeling of his daughter in his arms. But as he slipped deeper into slumber, the dreams came again, as vivid as ever. He found himself in the now familiar living room, but something was different. The children from his previous dreams were there, but so were Sarah and Emily, all four playing together as if they'd known each other their whole lives. Michael watched, a sense of peace washing over him as the two families intertwined seamlessly. A woman's voice called from another room, "Dinner's ready." The children rushed past Michael, and he followed them into a warm, inviting kitchen. The woman at the stove turned, and Michael's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't Catherine, as he had half expected, but a stranger with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Welcome home, love," she said, and Michael felt a surge of affection so strong it almost overwhelmed him. As they all sat down to dinner, the conversation flowed easily, filled with laughter and shared stories. Michael found himself fully present, engaged with each child, asking about their day, offering words of encouragement and love. It felt so natural, so right, that the stark contrast to his waking life was almost painful. The dream shifted, and suddenly Michael was sitting on a porch swing, the unknown woman beside him. They watched as all 4 children played in the yard. Their laughter carried on the warm summer breeze. "You've come so far," the woman said, turning to him with a smile. "I'm proud of you." Michael felt a lump form in his throat. "I don't understand," he said. "Who are you? Why am I dreaming about you and these children?" The woman's smile turned sad. "You know who I am, Michael. You have my heart." With a jolt, Michael woke up, his heart racing. The hospital room came into focus around him, the steady beep of the heart monitor grounding him in reality. But the dream lingered, its emotions as real and raw as anything he had experienced in his waking life. For the first time, Michael allowed himself to truly consider Dr. Chun's words about cellular memory. Could it be possible? Was he somehow experiencing memories or emotions from his heart donor? As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Michael made a decision. He needed to know more about his donor. He needed to understand why these dreams felt so real, so important. With trembling fingers, he reached for the call button. When the nurse appeared, he said, "Could you please ask Dr. Chun to come see me as soon as possible? I have some questions about my heart donor." The nurse nodded, a look of understanding crossing her face. "Of course, Mr. Reeves. I'll let her know right away." Single quotes as Michael waited for Dr. Chun. He found himself filled with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Whatever these dreams meant, whatever truths they were leading him towards, he was determined to follow the path. For the first time in as long as he could remember, Michael Reeves was ready to listen to his heart in every sense of the phrase. Dr. Chun arrived shortly after breakfast, her expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. She took a seat beside Michael's bed, her clipboard resting on her lap. "The nurse said you had questions about your donor?" Michael nodded, suddenly feeling unsure of how to broach the subject. He'd always prided himself on being rational, logical. How could he explain these dreams without sounding unhinged? Taking a deep breath, he began. "Dr. Chun, I've been having these dreams, vivid dreams about a family I've never met. A woman, 2 children. They feel so real, so familiar." He paused, searching for the right words. "You mentioned cellular memory before. Is it possible I'm experiencing memories from my donor?" Dr. Chen's expression softened. She leaned forward slightly, her voice gentle but professional. "Mr. Reeves, as I mentioned before, the concept of cellular memory is controversial in the medical community. While there have been anecdotal reports of transplant recipients experiencing new tastes, preferences, or even dreams that seem connected to their donors, there's no concrete scientific evidence to support this phenomenon." Michael nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. "I understand. It's just, these dreams feel so significant, like they're trying to tell me something important." Dr. Chung considered this for a moment. "Regardless of their origin, these dreams clearly hold meaning for you. Perhaps instead of focusing on whether they're memories from your donor, we should explore what they might represent in your own life. What feelings do these dreams evoke?" Michael closed his eyes, recalling the warmth and love he felt in those dream sequences. "Connection," he said softly. "Presence. The kind of father and partner I never allowed myself to be." A small smile played at Dr. Chun's lips. "It sounds like these dreams might be reflecting desires or regrets you have about your own family. Your subconscious could be using the idea of this unknown family to help you process these feelings." Michael nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "That makes sense, but it doesn't explain why they feel so specific, so real." Dr. Chun leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Reeves, while I can't disclose any information about your donor due to confidentiality laws, I can tell you this. The decision to donate organs is one of the most selfless acts a person or their family can make. It comes from a place of deep love and a desire to help others." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Perhaps, on some level, You're connecting with that love and selflessness. Your new heart is a precious gift, one that's giving you a second chance at life. It's natural to contemplate how you want to use that chance. Michael felt a lump form in his throat. He'd been so focused on the physical aspects of his recovery, he hadn't allowed himself to fully process the emotional weight of receiving such a gift. "Thank you, Dr. Chun," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. "You've given me a lot to think about." After Dr. Chun left, Michael found himself lost in thought. He reflected on his life before the transplant, the long hours at the office, the missed recitals and soccer games, the growing distance between him and his family. He'd always justified his actions as necessary sacrifices for success, but now he wondered, at what cost? His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. To his surprise, Jake entered, looking slightly out of place in the hospital setting. "Hey, Mike," Jake said, approaching the bed. "How are you feeling?" Michael managed a small smile. "Better every day." "Thanks for coming, Jake." Jake nodded, taking a seat. He seemed uncomfortable, fidgeting with his tie. "Listen, Mike, the board is getting antsy. They're wondering when you'll be back full-time." "I've been holding them off, but..." Michael held up a hand, stopping Jake mid-sentence. "Jake, I need to tell you something. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I'm not sure I want to come back. At least, not in the same capacity as before." Jake's eyes widened in shock. "What are you talking about, Mike? The company needs you. We're on the verge of that merger we've been working on for months." Michael shook his head slowly. "The company will be fine, Jake. You're more than capable of handling things. I need to focus on my family. I'm being present in a way I never have been before." Jake leaned back in his chair, studying Michael with a mixture of concern and disbelief. "Mike, is this because of the surgery? Are you sure you're thinking clearly?" A small chuckle escaped Michael's lips. "Actually, Jake, I think I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. This experience, it's shown me what's truly important. And as much as I love our company, it's not worth sacrificing my relationship with my daughters." Jake was quiet for a long moment, processing Michael's words. Finally, he nodded slowly. "I can't say I understand completely, Mike, but if this is what you want, I'll support you. We'll figure out the details when you're feeling better." After Jake left, Michael felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time in years, he felt truly aligned with his priorities. He picked up his phone, scrolling to Catherine's number. After a moment's hesitation, he pressed call. "Michael?" Catherine answered, surprise evident in her voice. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Michael assured her quickly. "I was wondering, do you think the girls would be up for a visit? Here at the hospital?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I think they'd like that," Catherine said finally. "When were you thinking? How about this weekend?" Michael suggested, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Okay," Catherine agreed. "I'll talk to them and let you know." As Michael ended the call, he felt a sense of anticipation building within him. He was taking steps towards rebuilding his relationship with his daughters, towards being the father he now realized he always should have been. That night, as Michael drifted off to sleep, he found himself both eager for and apprehensive about the dreams that might come. But as he slipped into slumber, he was met not with visions of the unknown family, but with memories of his own. He dreamed of Sarah's first steps, of Emily's first words. He relived moments he had been present for, but hadn't fully appreciated at the time. Bedtime stories, family dinners, quiet Sunday mornings. In the dream, he was fully engaged, savoring each moment with his family. When Michael woke the next morning, he felt a profound sense of peace. Whether the dreams of the unknown family were memories from his donor or manifestations of his own subconscious, they had served their purpose. They had awakened him to the importance of family, of presence, of love. As sunlight streamed through the hospital window, Michael found himself looking forward to the future with a renewed sense of purpose. He had been given a second chance, not just at life, but at being the man, the father he truly wanted to be. And this time, he was determined not to waste it. As the weekend approached, Michael found himself filled with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. The prospect of spending time with his daughters, truly connecting with them, was both exhilarating and daunting. He spent hours thinking about what he would say, how he could begin to bridge the gap that years of neglect had created. On Saturday morning, Michael woke early, his mind racing. He asked the nurses to help him look as presentable as possible, even requesting a shave and a fresh hospital gown. As he waited, he found himself repeatedly glancing at the clock, willing the hands to move faster. Finally, a soft knock at the door announced their arrival. Catherine entered first, offering Michael a small, encouraging smile. Behind her came Sarah and Emily, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Hi, Dad," Emily said softly, stepping closer to the bed. Sarah hung back, her arms crossed protectively over her chest. Michael felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Hi, girls," he managed, his voice rough. "Thank you for coming. It means a lot to me." Catherine cleared her throat. "I'll leave you three to talk. I'll be in the cafeteria if you need me." With a final glance at Michael, she left the room, closing the door behind her. An awkward silence fell over the room. Michael took a deep breath, steeling himself. "I know this is strange," he began, "and I know I haven't been the father you deserved, but I want you to know that's going to change. If you'll let me, I want to be part of your lives. Really part of your lives." Emily nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. But Sarah remained silent, her expression unreadable. "Sarah?" Michael said gently, "I know you have every right to be angry with me. I've missed so much, and I can never get that time back. But I'm hoping we can start fresh." Sarah's jaw clenched, and for a moment, Michael thought she might turn and leave. But then she spoke, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. "Why now, Dad? Why does it take almost dying for you to care about us?" The words hit Michael like a physical blow, but he knew he deserved them. "You're right," he said softly. I've been a fool. I thought I was providing for you by focusing on work, but I see now that what you really needed was me. My time, my attention, my love. And I'm so sorry it took something like this to make me realize that." Tears were flowing freely down Emily's cheeks now. She moved to the side of the bed, taking Michael's hand in hers. "We missed you, Dad," she whispered. Sarah watched this interaction, her expression softening slightly. "How do we know this isn't temporary?" she asked, her voice small and vulnerable. "How do we know you won't go back to how you were before, once you're better?" Michael met her gaze, his eyes filled with determination. "Because I can't," he said simply. "This experience, it's changed me, Sarah, in ways I'm still trying to understand. But what I do know is that I can't go back to being the man I was before. I don't wanna." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I decided to step back from the company. Jake will take over as CEO. I want to focus on what's really important. You girls, our family." Both Sarah and Emily's eyes widened in shock. They knew how much the company meant to their father, how he had poured his life into building it. "Really?" Sarah asked, a hint of hope creeping into her voice. Michael nodded. "Really. I've been given a second chance and I don't intend to waste it." Slowly, Sarah moved closer to the bed. She reached out, hesitantly at first, then more firmly, taking Michael's other hand. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay, Dad, let's try." For the next hour, the three of them really talked, in a way they hadn't in years. Michael listened as his daughters told him about their lives. Sarah's passion for environmental science, Emily's dreams of becoming a professional musician. He shared stories from his own childhood, things he'd never taken the time to tell them before. As they talked, Michael felt something shift within him. The constant drive, the relentless ambition that had defined him for so long, began to fade. In its place grew something warmer, softer, yet infinitely more powerful, a deep, abiding love for his daughters, and a determination to be the father they deserved. When Catherine returned to collect the girls, she found a transformed scene. Sarah and Emily were perched on either side of Michael's bed, all three laughing at some shared joke. The tension and awkwardness from earlier had dissipated, replaced by a tentative but growing warmth. As the girls prepared to leave, making promises to visit again soon, Michael felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. He had been given not just a new heart, but a new perspective, a new chance at life and love. That night, as Michael drifted off to sleep, he found himself both anticipating and fearing the dreams that might come. Would he see the unknown family again? Or would his dreams now be filled with visions of his own family, of the future he hoped to build with his daughters? As sleep claimed him, Michael found himself once again in the familiar living room from his previous dreams. But this time, something was different. The unknown woman was there, smiling at him with a mixture of pride and sadness. "You're finding your way," she said softly. Michael nodded, feeling a lump form in his throat. "Thank you," he said, though he wasn't sure exactly what he was thanking her for. The woman's smile widened. "Take care of them," she said. "Take care of yourself. Live the life you were meant to live." As she spoke, her image began to fade, the dream dissolving around Michael. He tried to reach out, to ask her to stay, but found himself waking up, tears streaming down his face. In the quiet of the hospital room, Michael lay awake for a long time, reflecting on the dream. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had just experienced something profound, a passing of the torch from one life to another. Whether the dreams were memories from his donor, manifestations of his subconscious, or something else entirely, Michael knew they had served their purpose. They had awakened him to the importance of love, of family, of being present in the moments that truly mattered. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Michael made a silent promise to himself, to his daughters, and to the unknown donor whose gift had given him this second chance. He would live fully, love deeply, and cherish every moment of this precious life he had been given. With this resolution firmly in his heart, Michael closed his eyes, allowing himself to drift back to sleep. This time, his dreams were filled with visions of the future, family dinners, holidays, graduations, a life filled with love, laughter, and the joy of simply being present. And as he slept, a small smile played at his lips, his new heart beating strong and steady in his chest, carrying him forward into a future bright with possibility. As the days passed, Michael's recovery continued to progress, both physically and emotionally. The visits from Sarah and Emily became more frequent, each one bringing them closer together. They shared stories, played board games, and even started planning for the future, a future where Michael would be an active, present part of their lives. During one such visit, as they were engaged in a heated game of Scrabble, Michael found himself marveling at the change in his daughters. Sarah, once guarded and distant, now laughed freely, her eyes sparkling with a warmth he hadn't seen in years. Emily, always the more openly affectionate of the two, seemed to blossom under her father's renewed attention, eagerly sharing her latest musical compositions and school achievements. As Emily deliberated over her next move in the game, Sarah turned to Michael, her expression suddenly serious. "Dad," she began, her voice hesitant, "I've been thinking about what you said, about stepping back from the company." Michael nodded, encouraging her to continue. "Are you sure that's what you want?" Sarah asked, concern evident in her voice. "I mean, you've worked so hard to build it. Won't you miss it?" Michael smiled softly, reaching out to take his daughter's hand. "Sarah, I won't lie. The company has been a huge part of my life for a long time, but this experience, it's shown me what's truly important." He paused, looking between his two daughters. "You girls, our family, that's what matters most. I've missed so much, and I don't want to miss any more." Emily looked up from her letter tiles, her eyes shining. "Really, Dad? You mean it?" Michael nodded, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "I do. I can't change the past, but I can be here for you now and in the future. That's what I want more than anything." The game forgotten, both girls moved to embrace their father, careful of his healing chest. As Michael held his daughters close, he felt a sense of peace and rightness that he had never experienced before. Later that evening, after the girls had left, Dr. Chun stopped by for her usual checkup. As she examined Michael, she couldn't help but notice the change in his demeanor. "You seem different, Mr. Reeves," she observed, a small smile playing at her lips. "More at peace." Michael nodded, returning her smile. "I feel different, Dr. Chun. like I'm finally seeing clearly for the first time in years. Dr. Chun made a few notes in his chart before taking a seat beside the bed. I'm glad to. How are the dreams? Are you still experiencing them? Michael paused, considering. They've changed, he said slowly. I still see the unknown family sometimes, but it's different now. Less vivid, more peaceful, like they're fading away. He looked up at Dr. Chun, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and wonder. But I'm dreaming of my own family now too. Of the future we might have together. Dr. Chun nodded thoughtfully. That sounds like a positive development, Mr. Reeves. It seems you're integrating the lessons from these dreams into your waking life. I think you're right. Michael agreed. Whatever their source, these dreams, they've changed me. Show me what's truly important. As Dr. Chun prepared to leave, she paused at the door. Mr. Reeves, I have some good news. Given your progress, we're considering releasing you next week. You'll need to continue with regular checkups and cardiac rehab, of course, but you should be able to recover at home. Michael felt a surge of excitement at the prospect of leaving the hospital, but also a twinge of anxiety. Thank you, Dr. Chun. That's wonderful news. After she left, Michael found himself lost in thought. The idea of going home, of truly beginning this new chapter of his life, was both thrilling and daunting. He reached for his phone, dialing Catherine's number almost without thinking. Michael? Catherine answered, surprise evident in her voice. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, he assured her quickly. I wanted to let you know that, Doctor. Chun says I might be released next week. There was a pause on the other end of the line. That's great news, Michael, Catherine said finally. Have you thought about where you'll go? Your apartment isn't really set up for recovery. Michael hadn't considered this. His luxurious penthouse, once a symbol of his success, now seemed cold and unwelcoming. I'm not sure, he admitted. Catherine was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was gentle. Why don't you come stay with us? We have the guest room, and it would make it easier for the girls to see you. Michael felt a lump form in his throat. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. You wouldn't be imposing, Catherine assured him. The girls would love it, and, it might be good for all of us to have this time together. As Michael ended the call, agreeing to Catherine's offer, he felt a sense of anticipation building within him. This was another step towards the future he now longed for, a future where he was an integral part of his family's daily life. That night, as Michael drifted off to sleep, his dreams were a kaleidoscope of images, flashes of the unknown, family intermingled with scenes from his own past and visions of the future. But unlike before, these dreams didn't leave him feeling conflicted or confused. Instead, he felt a sense of integration, as if all the pieces of his life, past, present, and future, were finally coming together. In one particularly vivid moment, Michael found himself standing in a sunlit garden. The unknown woman from his previous dreams was there, but so were Catherine and his daughters. They all smiled at him, their expressions filled with love and acceptance. The unknown woman stepped forward, placing a hand over Michael's heart. Remember, she said softly, her voice filled with warmth. Remember and live. As the dream faded and Michael slowly woke, he found his cheeks wet with tears. But these weren't tears of sadness or confusion. They were tears of gratitude, of joy, of a profound understanding of the gift he had been given. In the quiet of the early morning, Michael made a silent vow. He would honor this gift, the gift of life, of a new heart, of a second chance. He would live each day fully, love deeply, and cherish every moment with his family. As the sun rose, painting the hospital room in warm hues, Michael felt ready to leave the cocoon of the hospital, ready to face the challenges of recovery, ready to step into the new life that awaited him. A life guided by love, by presence, by the steady beat of his new heart. The day of Michael's discharge from the hospital arrived with a mix of excitement and nervous energy. As he packed the few personal belongings he had accumulated during his stay, Michael couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. He was leaving the safety and routine of the hospital to step into a new, uncertain future. Dr. Chun arrived for a final checkup, her clipboard in hand and a warm smile on her face. Well, mister, Reeves, today's the big day. How are you feeling? Michael took a deep breath, considering the question. Grateful, he said finally. Nervous, but grateful, doctor. Chum nodded understanding. That's perfectly normal. Remember, this is just the next step in your recovery. You'll still need to take things slow, attend your rehab sessions, and come in for regular checkups. As she went through his discharge instructions, Michael found his mind wandering to the home he was about to enter. Catherine's house, once his home too, filled with memories both joyful and painful. He wondered how it would feel to be there again, not as the distant, work-obsessed man he once was, but as this new version of himself. M.R. Reeves, doctor. Chun's voice brought him back to the present. Do you have any questions? Michael shook his head. No, I think I understand everything. Thank you, Dr. Chun, for everything. As he shook her hand, Michael felt a lump form in his throat. This woman had not only saved his life, but had also been a guiding presence through his physical and emotional recovery. You're very welcome, Mr. Reeves, Doctor, Chen replied, her eyes twinkling. Just remember, this new heart of yours is a gift. Use it wisely. Single quotes. With those words echoing in his mind, Michael was wheeled out of the hospital. Catherine was waiting with the car, her expression a mixture of concern and something softer, almost hopeful. Ready? She asked as she helped him into the passenger seat. Michael nodded, unable to find words as a wave of emotion washed over him. As they pulled away from the hospital, he found himself studying Catherine's profile. She had been his high school sweetheart, the mother of his children, his partner for so many years before work had consumed him. Now, here she was, offering him another chance. The drive to the suburbs was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. As they turned onto the familiar street, Michael felt his heart rate increase. The house came into view, the same two-story colonial they had bought together when Sarah was born. It looked exactly as he remembered, yet somehow completely different. Catherine parked in the driveway and turned to Michael. The girls are inside. They've been preparing all morning. Just take it easy, okay? This is new for all of us. Michael nodded, touched by her concern. As they made their way to the front door, he leaned heavily on the cane the hospital had provided, acutely aware of how weak he still was. The door opened before they reached it, revealing Sarah and Emily, both wearing broad smiles. "Welcome home, Dad," they chorused. As Michael stepped into the house, he was overwhelmed by a sense of homecoming. The familiar scent of Catherine's favorite candles, the sound of the old grandfather clock in the hallway, the sight of family photos lining the walls. It all hit him at once, bringing tears to his eyes. "Dad, are you okay?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with worry. Michael nodded, wiping at his eyes. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just happy to be here." Single quotes. The girls led him to the living room, where they had set up a comfortable recliner surrounded by pillows and blankets. On the coffee table was a stack of books, magazines, and a tablet preloaded with movies and TV shows. "We wanted to make sure you had everything you might need," Sarah explained, a hint of shyness in her voice. Michael felt his heart swell with love for his daughters. "It's perfect," he said softly. "Thank you both." As he settled into the recliner, Catherine brought in a tray with tea and some light snacks. The girls curled up on the couch, and for a moment, they all just looked at each other, unsure of what to do next. "So," Michael said, breaking the silence, "tell me what I've missed. What's been going on in your lives?" And just like that, the ice was broken. Sarah launched into a story about her latest science project, while Emily chimed in with news about an upcoming recital. Catherine sat back, a small smile playing on her lips as she watched her family reunite. As the afternoon wore on, Michael found himself marveling at how easy it felt, how natural. There were still moments of awkwardness, of course. Years of distance couldn't be erased in a single day. But there was also laughter, genuine interest, and a palpable sense of love. When dinner time approached, Catherine stood up. "I should start cooking. Any requests? Can we have your famous lasagna?" Emily asked eagerly. Catherine hesitated, glancing at Michael. "I'm not sure if that's on your approved diet, Michael." Michael smiled. "Maybe a small piece wouldn't hurt, with a big salad on the side." Catherine nodded, returning his smile. "I think we can manage that." As Catherine moved to the kitchen, Sarah surprised everyone by offering to help. Emily stayed with Michael, pulling out a chess set. "Want to play, Dad?" "I've been practicing." Michael felt a pang of regret, realizing he couldn't remember the last time he had played chess with his daughter. "I'd love to," he said, determined to make new, better memories. As they set up the board, Michael found himself marveling at the simple joy of the moment. The sound of Sarah and Catherine chatting in the kitchen, the concentration on Emily's face as she contemplated her moves, the comfort of being surrounded by family. It was everything he had been missing for so long. Halfway through the game, Michael felt a wave of fatigue wash over him. Emily noticed immediately. "Are you okay, Dad? Do you need to rest?" Michael nodded, feeling a mix of frustration at his weakness and gratitude for his daughter's concern. "I think I might need to close my eyes for a bit." "I'm sorry, sweetheart." Emily shook her head, smiling. "Don't apologize, Dad. We can finish the game later. Do you want me to help you to your room?" "That would be great. Thank you." As Emily helped him up and guided him to the guest room, now his room, Michael felt a surge of love for his daughter. She had grown into such a caring, perceptive young woman, and he was determined to be there for every moment of her continued growth. Settled in bed, Michael found himself drifting off almost immediately. As he slipped into sleep, he wondered if he would dream of the unknown family again. But this time, his dreams were filled with images of his own family, past, present, and imagined future, all blending together in a warm, comforting tapestry. He dreamed of Sarah's first steps, of Emily's first piano recital. He saw Catherine on their wedding day, her eyes shining with love and hope. But he also dreamed of moments yet to come, family vacations, graduations, perhaps even grandchildren someday. When Michael woke, the room was dark, and for a moment, he was disoriented. Then he remembered he was home, not in his cold, impersonal penthouse, but in the warm heart of his family's home. A soft knock at the door pulled him fully awake. "Dad?" It was Sarah's voice. "Are you awake? Dinner's ready if you're feeling up to it. Come in, sweetheart," Michael called. Sarah entered, flicking on the bedside lamp. In the soft glow, Michael could see the concern in her eyes. "How are you feeling?" Michael smiled, touched by her care. "Much better after that nap. I think I'm ready for some of your mom's lasagna." Sarah helped him up, and as they made their way back to the living room where the family had decided to eat, Michael felt a profound sense of rightness. This was where he belonged. This was what truly mattered. As they gathered around the coffee table, plates balanced on their laps, Michael looked at each member of his family in turn. Catherine, her face softened by the lamplight, looking more beautiful to him than ever. Sarah, her eyes bright with intelligence and a newfound warmth. Emily, her smile wide and unguarded. "Before we eat," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion, "I just want to say thank you. Thank you for giving me this chance, for welcoming me back. I know I have a lot to make up for, but I promise you, I'm going to do everything I can to be the father and the man you all deserve." For a moment, there was silence. Then Emily reached out, taking his hand. Sarah followed suit, and finally, Catherine completed the circle. In that moment, connected by touch and by love, Michael felt his new heart swell with emotion. He knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, and difficult conversations. But he also knew, with a certainty that ran bone deep, that this connection, this love, was what he had been given a second chance for. And he was determined to make the most of it, one heartbeat at a time. As the days turned into weeks, Michael settled into a new rhythm of life with his family. Each day brought its own challenges and triumphs as he navigated the physical demands of recovery alongside the emotional journey of reconnecting with his loved ones. Mornings often found Michael on the back porch, a steaming cup of herbal tea in hand, watching the sun rise over the neatly manicured lawns of the suburb. These quiet moments of reflection became a cherished part of his new routine, a time to center himself and set intentions for the day ahead. One such morning, Catherine joined him, wrapping a cardigan around herself against the early chill. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the unspoken weight of their shared history hanging between them. "How are you really doing, Michael?" Catherine finally asked, her voice soft but probing. Michael took a moment to consider the question. "Honestly, it's overwhelming at times. Wonderful, but overwhelming." He turned to look at her, his eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and regret. "I keep thinking about all the moments like this I missed. All the breakfasts, all the quiet mornings." Catherine nodded, her expression thoughtful. "We can't change the past, Michael, but we're now. That's what matters." Her words echoed in Michael's mind as he went about his day. Physical therapy sessions pushed his body to its limits, reminding him of how far he had to go in his recovery. But it was the emotional terrain that often proved the most challenging to navigate. Sarah and Emily, while welcoming, still had moments of hesitation. Years of disappointment and misconnections couldn't be erased overnight. Michael found himself constantly aware of the delicate balance, eager to make up for lost time, but wary of pushing too hard. One afternoon, as Michael rested between therapy sessions, he overheard a hushed conversation between his daughters in the hallway. "Do you think he's really changed?" Sarah's voice was skeptical. Emily's reply was quick and earnest. "I think he's trying, Sarah. Isn't that what matters? But for how long?" Sarah countered. "What if he gets better and goes right back to how he was before?" Michael felt a pang in his chest at his daughter's words, recognizing the fear behind them because it mirrored his own. The fear of falling back into old patterns, of letting down his family once again. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Michael cleared his throat. "I'd like to talk to you all about something," he began, his voice slightly shaky. 3 pairs of eyes turned to him, curiosity and a hint of apprehension in their gazes. "I know this transition hasn't been easy for any of you," Michael continued, "and I want you to know that I understand your hesitation, your doubts." He looked directly at Sarah as he said this, seeing the surprise in her eyes. "I have those doubts too sometimes." Emily reached out, placing her hand on his arm. "Dad, you don't have to." Michael shook his head gently. "No, I do. I need you all to know that I'm committed to this change, not just for now, but for the long haul. I can't promise I'll be perfect. I'll make mistakes, I'm sure. But I can promise that I'll always try, always be here, always put this family first." He took a deep breath before continuing. "I'd been thinking a lot about the future, about what I want my life to look like moving forward, and I've made a decision." He paused, making eye contact with each of them. "I'm not going back to ReveTech, not as CEO. I'm going to sell my controlling shares." A collective gasp went around the table. They all knew how much the company had meant to him, how it had been the center of his world for so long. "But Dad," Sarah began, her voice a mix of confusion and concern, "the company is your life's work." Michael smiled softly. "It was. But now, I have more important work to do. Being here, being part of this family, that's what matters most to me now." Catherine reached across the table, taking his hand. "Are you sure about this, Michael?" He nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The conversation that followed was long and emotional. There were tears of relief, of joy, of lingering sadness for time lost. But there was also laughter and a growing sense of hope for the future. As the days passed, Michael threw himself into his new role with the same dedication he had once given his company. He attended every one of Emily's music practices, offering encouragement and genuine interest. He engaged with Sarah about her environmental science projects, even reaching out to old contacts to help her secure an internship she had been eyeing. The changes in the family dynamic were subtle but profound. Family dinners, once rushed affairs when Michael bothered to attend at all, became lively events filled with conversation and shared stories. Game nights were instituted, filling the house with laughter and playful competition, but it wasn't always smooth sailing. There were moments of frustration, of old hurts bubbling to the surface. During one particularly heated argument about college plans, Sarah lashed out. "You don't get to have an opinion on this." She shouted, "You haven't been here." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. Michael felt as if he'd been physically struck, the truth of her statement cutting deep. But instead of retreating or becoming defensive, as he might have in the past, Michael took a deep breath. "You're right, Sarah. he said softly. I haven't been here, and I'm so sorry for. I can't change the past, but I'm here now. I want to be part of your life, part of these decisions. If you'll let me. Sarah's anger seemed to deflate, replaced by a vulnerability that made her look younger than her years. I don't know how, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael moved closer, tentatively opening his arms. After a moment's hesitation, Sarah stepped into his embrace. As he held his daughter, feeling her shoulders shake with quiet sobs, Michael silently renewed his vow to be the father she deserved. These moments of connection, of healing, became the new landmarks of Michael's life. Instead of measuring time by fiscal quarters and profit margins, he now marked it by family milestones. Emily's music recitals, Sarah's science fair victories, quiet evenings spent reconnecting with Catherine. These became the moments he treasured most. As his physical strength returned, Michael found new ways to engage with his family. He and Catherine started taking evening walks together, using the time to talk about everything and nothing. These walks became a cherished ritual, a time for them to reconnect as partners and friends. One evening, as they strolled hand in hand under a canopy of stars, Catherine turned to him. I'm proud of you, Michael, she said softly. The way you've embraced this change, the effort you're making with the girls. It's more than I ever dared to hope for. Michael felt a lump form in his throat. I couldn't have done it without you, he replied. Your forgiveness, your willingness to give me another chance. It means everything to me. Catherine squeezed his hand. We're in this together now. Whatever comes next, we'll face it as a family. As they turned back towards home, Michael felt a sense of peace wash over him. The dreams of the unknown family had faded, replaced by the vibrant reality of his own family. He still thought of his donor sometimes, feeling a profound gratitude for the gift of life and the chance at redemption. But now, with each beat of his new heart, Michael felt himself moving forward into a future bright with possibility, rich with love, and filled with the joy of simply being present in the moments that truly mattered. The journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But Michael knew, with a certainty that ran so deep, that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Home, in every sense of the word. As summer turned to fall, the Reeves family settled into a new normal. The initial awkwardness of Michael's return had given way to a comfortable routine, punctuated by moments of genuine connection and shared joy. The changing leaves in the backyard mirrored the transformation happening within their home. A gradual, beautiful shift from what was to what could be. One crisp Saturday morning, Michael found himself raking leaves with Sarah. The physical activity was part of his ongoing recovery, carefully monitored and approved by his doctors. As they worked side by side, Michael couldn't help but marvel at how such a simple task could feel so profound. You know, Sarah said, pausing to lean on her rake, I used to do this alone every year. I always wished you were here to help. Michael felt a familiar pang of regret, but he pushed through it. I'm sorry I missed so much, Sarah, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. Sarah nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. I know, Dad. It's nice. As they continued to work, Michael found himself opening up about his own childhood. He told Sarah about growing up in a small town, about his own father who had been present physically, but often distant emotionally. I think, in a way, I was trying so hard not to be like him that I ended up making the same mistakes, just in a different way, Michael admitted. Sarah considered this, her brow furrowed in thought. Do you think people can really change? Fundamentally, I mean? Michael paused, considering the weight of her question. I think, he said slowly, that change is possible, but it's not easy. It requires constant effort, constant awareness. But yes, I believe people can change if they truly want to. Sarah nodded, seeming to absorb his words. After a moment, she spoke again, her voice softer. I'm glad you're trying, Dad. It means a lot. The moment was interrupted by Emily bursting out of the house, waving a letter excitedly. Dad, Sarah, it came. My audition results for the state orchestra. Michael and Sarah exchanged a glance before hurrying over. Catherine appeared in the doorway, her expression a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. With trembling hands, Emily tore open the envelope. Her eyes scanned the letter, growing wider with each passing second. Then, a smile broke across her face, like the sun emerging from behind clouds. "I made it," she exclaimed. First chair violin. The backyard erupted in cheers. Michael swept Emily into a hug, his heart swelling with pride. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," he said, his voice thick with emotion. So proud. As the family celebrated Emily's achievement, Michael found himself overwhelmed by the joy of the moment. This, he realized, was what he had been missing all those years. These precious, irreplaceable moments of family triumph and shared happiness. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table enjoying a special meal in Emily's honor, Michael raised his glass of sparkling cider. "To Emily," he said, "and to new beginnings." The family echoed his toast, the atmosphere warm with love and celebration. As Michael looked around the table, he felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over him for his family's forgiveness, for this second chance at life, for the unknown donor whose gift had made all of this possible. Later that night, as Michael prepared for bed, he found himself reflecting on the day's events. The simple joy of working alongside Sarah, the elation of Emily's achievement, the warmth of family dinner. These were the moments that gave life its richness, its meaning. As he drifted off to sleep, Michael found himself once again in the familiar dreamscape. But this time, instead of the unknown family, he saw his own. Sarah and Emily, older now, dressed in caps and gowns. Catherine, her hair streaked with silver, smiling proudly. And himself, standing tall and strong, no longer the frail recovering patient, but a man fully present in his life and the lives of his loved ones. The dream shifted, and Michael found himself face to face with the woman he had come to associate with his donor. She smiled at him, her eyes filled with a knowing warmth. "You found your way," she said softly. Michael nodded, feeling a lump form in his throat. "Thank you," he said, pouring all his gratitude into those two simple words. "For everything." The woman's smile widened. "Live well," she said. "Love deeply. That's all the thanks I need." As the dream faded and Michael drifted back to consciousness, he felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. The dreams of the unknown family, which had once been so vivid and frequent, had gradually given way to dreams of his own family, his own future. It felt like a passing of the torch, a gentle transition from one life to another. The next morning, Michael woke early, feeling refreshed and energized. He made his way downstairs, intending to start breakfast for the family, as had become his habit. To his surprise, he found Catherine already in the kitchen, a thoughtful expression on her face as she stirred her coffee. "Good morning," Michael said softly, not wanting to startle her. "You're up early." Catherine looked up, offering him a warm smile. "Good morning. I couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts." Michael poured himself a cup of coffee and joined her at the table. "Want to share?" Catherine was quiet for a moment, seeming to gather her thoughts. "I've been thinking about us, Michael, about our family, about the future." Michael felt his heart rate increase slightly. "Oh?" Catherine reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "These past few months, seeing you with the girls, seeing how much you've changed, it's been wonderful. More than I ever dared to hope for." Michael squeezed her hand gently, encouraging her to continue. "I think," Catherine paused, taking a deep breath, "I think I'm ready to try again." "US, I mean." "If you are." Michael felt as if his heart might burst with emotion. "Catherine," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "nothing would make me happier." As they sat there, hands clasped across the kitchen table, Michael felt as if his life had come full circle. From the driven, distant man he had been, through the crucible of his health crisis and recovery, to this moment of new beginnings and second chances. The sound of footsteps on the stairs broke the moment. Sarah and Emily appeared, still in their pajamas, drawn by the smell of coffee and the promise of breakfast. "Morning, Mom. Morning, Dad," Emily said through a yawn. Sarah, more observant, looked between her parents with raised eyebrows. "Is everything okay?" Michael and Catherine exchanged a glance, a silent communication passing between them. Then, Catherine smiled. "Everything's fine, girls. In fact, everything's wonderful. "Your father and I have something we'd like to talk to you about." As the family gathered around the table, the morning sun streaming through the windows, Michael felt a sense of rightness settle over him. This was where he belonged. This was what truly mattered. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever joys and sorrows the future might bring, they would face them together. As a family, united by love, strengthened by forgiveness, and guided by the steady, precious beat of a heart that had been given a second chance. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of his family's love, Michael silently renewed his vow to live fully, to love deeply, to be present in every moment, to honor the gift he had been given by making every heartbeat count. And as he looked around at the faces of his loved ones, Michael knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be, home, in every sense of the word. As the seasons continued to change, so did the Reeves family. The tentative steps towards reconciliation had blossomed into a full-fledged renaissance of their family bonds. Michael, true to his word, remained committed to his role as a present and engaged father and partner. Winter brought with it a blanket of snow and the warmth of holiday celebrations. For the first time in years, Michael threw himself into the festivities with genuine enthusiasm. He helped Emily hang lights around the house, laughing as they tangled themselves in strings of twinkling bulbs. He and Sarah spent an afternoon picking out the perfect Christmas tree, their breaths forming clouds in the crisp air as they debated the merits of Douglas fir versus blue spruce. On Christmas Eve, as the family gathered in the living room, the fire crackling and the tree glowing softly, Michael found himself overwhelmed with emotion. He watched as Catherine distributed mugs of hot cocoa, as Sarah and Emily playfully argued over which Christmas movie to watch. This, he realized, was the true meaning of success, not the business deals or the accolades, but these precious moments of connection and joy. "I have something for all of you," Michael said, his voice cutting through the gentle chatter. 3 pairs of eyes turned to him, curiosity evident in their gazes. Michael reached behind the couch, pulling out a large, gift-wrapped box. "I know we said we'd wait until morning for gifts, but this one's special." As Catherine helped him place the box on the coffee table, Michael felt a flutter of nervousness in his chest. He'd put a lot of thought into this gift, hoping it would convey the depth of his commitment to his family. "Go ahead," he encouraged. "Open it together." With shared glances of excitement and curiosity, Catherine and the girls began to unwrap the gift. As the paper fell away, revealing a beautifully crafted wooden box, Michael held his breath. Catherine lifted the lid, and a soft gasp escaped her lips. Inside were 4 journals, each bound in soft leather of different colors. "These are family journals," Michael explained, his voice thick with emotion. "One for each of us. The idea is that we write in them regularly, our thoughts, our hopes, our fears. And once a month, we come together and share what we've written. To stay connected, to really understand each other." Emily was the first to reach in, running her fingers over the smooth cover of the purple journal. "Dad, this is… wow." Sarah picked up the green one, her expression thoughtful. "So we can write anything? Even if it's hard stuff?" Michael nodded. "Especially the hard stuff. I want us to be able to talk about everything, even when it's difficult." "Maybe especially then." Catherine looked up at Michael, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "This is beautiful, Michael. Thank you." As the family examined their journals, Michael felt a wave of relief wash over him. The gift had been a risk. Opening up, being vulnerable, wasn't something that came naturally to any of them, but it was a step towards the kind of openness and honesty he now knew was crucial for a strong family bond. The new year brought with it new challenges and triumphs. Sarah, in her final year of high school, threw herself into college applications. Michael found himself staying up late, helping her craft essays and weigh the pros and cons of different schools. These late-night sessions, fueled by cups of tea and shared dreams for the future, became some of his most treasured moments. Emily's music continued to flourish. Her dedication to the violin seemed to grow with each passing day, and Michael made sure to be there for every recital, every practice session where she wanted an audience. He learned to truly listen, to appreciate the nuances of her playing, and to offer encouragement that went beyond simple praise. As for Michael and Catherine, their relationship continued to evolve. They were rediscovering each other, learning to be partners in a way they hadn't been for years. Date nights became a regular occurrence, sometimes as simple as a walk in the park, other times dressing up for dinner at a nice restaurant. They talked, really talked, about their hopes and fears, their regrets and dreams. One spring evening, as they strolled hand in hand through a local botanical garden, Catherine turned to Michael with a serious expression. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice soft but determined. "About us, about our future." Michael felt his heart skip a beat. "Oh," Catherine took a deep breath. I think I'm ready for us to make it official again, to renew our vows." For a moment, Michael was speechless. Then, a smile broke across his face, wide and genuine. "Catherine, nothing would make me happier. Are you sure?" Catherine nodded, her eyes shining. "I'm sure. We're not the same people we were when we first got married. We've both grown, changed. I think it's time we celebrate that, to make a new commitment based on who we are now." As they embraced, the scent of spring blossoms in the air, Michael felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. This second chance at love, at family, was more precious to him than any business success had ever been. The following months were a whirlwind of activity. Sarah's college acceptance letters started rolling in, each one celebrated as a family regardless of the school. Emily was selected for a prestigious summer music program, her talent and hard work paying off in tangible ways. And through it all, Michael and Catherine planned their vow renewal ceremony, deciding on a small, intimate affair in their own backyard. On a warm summer evening, surrounded by twinkling lights and the people they loved most, Michael and Catherine stood facing each other. Their daughters stood beside them, Sarah as Catherine's maid of honor, Emily as Michael's best woman. As they exchanged their new vows, promises of love, support, and presence, Michael felt the full weight of the journey that had brought them to this moment. The years of distance, the health crisis that had nearly taken his life, the long road of recovery and reconnection, all of it had led here, to this moment of renewed commitment and love. "Catherine," Michael said, his voice strong and clear despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him, "I promise to love you fully and completely, to be present, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually, to support your dreams as fervently as my own, to face whatever challenges life brings us together. This heart," he placed a hand over his chest, "beats for you, for our girls, for the life we've built and will continue to build together." As they sealed their renewed vows with a kiss, the small gathering of family and close friends erupted in cheers and applause. Michael looked out at the faces of those gathered, his daughters beaming with joy. Jake, his old friend and business partner, who had supported his decision to step back from the company. Dr. Chun, whose care and guidance had been instrumental in his recovery. In that moment, Michael felt a sense of completion, of coming full circle. The dreams of the unknown family, which had once been so vivid and frequent, had faded entirely. But they had served their purpose, guiding him back to what truly mattered, showing him the kind of man, father, and partner he wanted to be. Later that night, as the celebration wound down and the last of the guests departed, Michael found a quiet moment alone. He stood at the edge of the yard, looking up at the star-filled sky. His hand absently moved to his chest, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart. His new heart, the gift that had changed everything. "Thank you," he whispered to the night sky, to the unknown donor whose final act of generosity had given him this second chance at life and love. "I promise to make it count." As he turned back towards the house, towards the warmth of his family and the promise of their shared future, Michael felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. The journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. There would be challenges ahead, moments of doubt and difficulty. But he knew now, with a bone-deep certainty, that he had the strength to face whatever came, because he wasn't facing it alone. He had his family, his love, and the precious gift of a heart that knew the true value of every beat. And that, Michael realized, was the greatest success story of all. As he stepped back into the warm glow of the house, back into the embrace of his family, Michael knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. Home, in every sense of the word, with a heart full of love and a future bright with possibility. And so, with each steady beat of his gifted heart, Michael stepped forward into that future, grateful for every moment, every breath, every chance to love and be loved in return. The story of his transformation, of a life reclaimed and a love renewed, would continue to unfold one precious heartbeat at a time. If you enjoyed this story, we'd love for you to support us by leaving a like and subscribing to our Slices of Life channel. We'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Which city are you talking about? It's very rewarding for us to provide our followers with an enjoyable moment. We appreciate the unconditional support you show us in every story. Blessings!